everybody and welcome back to my channel. So today I am making an artwork. Surprising, isn't it? Anyways, so today I am drawing an ARCHGRIFFIN from the Witcher series. I've been really into the Witcher series lately. My partner has been playing it and I have been watching the whole thing, and we have soaked so many hours into this, and also we've been quite into the Witcher Netflix series as well. Definitely recommend it if you're on the fence about it. It is a great show if you're into sort of fantasy style stuff, and that's the kind of shit I just love like so much. So anyways, today I'm drawing an ARCHGRIFFIN, as I mentioned earlier, and if you're not sure what that is, it's basically a griffin, except it also spits venom, and yeah, it's pretty awesome. So to start off, I actually did a few sketches in my sketchbook before actually going into the final thing. I just really wanted to sort of get this done well, and I wanted to sort of experiment with a few different poses that I had in mind, because I wasn't sure if those poses would actually translate well onto paper. So I tested them out, and I did one that was more sort of upright flying, and then I did one that was more sort of flying straight on towards the camera. But then this last one I did slightly up tilted a bit more, just so that you could see a bit more of that body. And I really like how I ended up getting the feet facing forward, because I wanted those big talons to be visible, as if it was sort of swooping down on you and you were about to become its prey. And I was very happy with this idea, so I actually decided to experiment further and do another sketch, basically full page, almost like a practice sketch, where I would just rough out rough details, you know, maybe see which way I wanted the tail to sit as it was flying along. And then after I finally got that all done, I went in and I did another sketch. Now I actually did this because I wanted to sketch on the paper itself. Usually I do like to sort of trace my sketches to do the line art, but this time I just felt like doing the sketch right on the paper. So the paper I'm actually using today is my Strathmore Bristol paper, and I did this paper because I really wanted to sort of do markers and pencil over the top. This is the paper that I like to use when I sort of mix my mediums and do a bit of marker and pencil work, and that's what I plan to do. Now with this sketch, I'm actually going a little bit lighter than normal, a bit less sketchy and a little bit more refined, because I plan to erase this sketch mostly before actually going over the top. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm sort of cleaning up lines in here, but before I actually go in with the sort of details and line art that are going to be part of the final illustration, I actually go over it with my kneadable eraser, and I just sort of roll it along the page. For the longest time, I have not really been into kneadable erasers, but I guess it's because I just didn't really know how to use it properly. I kind of used it as a regular eraser and it was just mushy and it didn't really work. But then it just hit me when I seen someone, I think it was drawing with waffles, sort of rolling it along the page, kind of like when you roll out a sausage with clay and it sort of just erases, it lightens the sketch as it goes, and you just keep doing it until you've got this really soft sketch. Kind of like when you're doing digital, where it ends up with like a really soft opacity so you can barely see it when you actually go in with your details and line art. Now today I'm actually using my colored pencils as the line art for this, and this is another one of those reasons why I wanted to erase the sketch as much as I could while still having it barely visible, is because you can't really erase over the top of colored pencils, because it's gonna sort of smoothen it and, you know, sort of get rid of that texture and maybe smear it a little bit. So to start off, mostly I went over with a black colored pencil, just because I knew this character was going to be very dark and it's going to have a lot of contrast in it, so I wanted that black line art to be really deep. And I tried my best to be a little bit more sketchy and a little bit more loose in the line art, because with this sort of style, the line art kind of disappears a little bit into the colors and the blending. So I didn't worry too much about the perfectness of the line art as I usually do with other illustrations, but I still wanted it to be sort of sketchy and loose, and you know, still define the shapes and the character and the anatomy quite a bit. So now we are on to the coloring phase, and I love coloring so much. If I didn't like, you know, making my own sort of illustrations, I would probably do coloring just adult coloring quite a lot because I just find it really soothing and fun, and yeah, I just really like it. I think coloring in the illustration is probably my favorite part because it's sort of therapeutic. But yeah, I started off just getting the base colors down in areas that I needed it to. I started off with some light orangey tones in the warm parts of the griffin, and also some sort of dark brown tones in other parts. The more sort of feathery and wing parts got more of the sort of dark browns and sort of rich colors. And yeah, I kept sort of building up the colors slowly here and there, adding little hints of red into the fur texture, as well as sort of greys and soft browns, and a little bit of black into some areas too, just to sort of deepen it and make that contrast more bright. Now with the griffins, they are part lion, so they do have this sort of mane part on them, especially in the Witcher series. They sort of emphasize that quite a bit, and with this griffin the mane is like a dark sort of black color, but I actually decided to go in with a layer first of blue, mainly royal blue and a little bit of Prussian blue as well, just for, you know, shadows and stuff. And then after that I actually went over the top with black, and that was to add the sort of more details and actual shadows. And yeah, I actually really like the way that that turned out because I was able to get sort of texture while still keeping a sort of cool blue and slightly more saturated highlights, and I just really like how that ended up. And I actually decided to have the claws and the talons of this creature that same sort of dark blackish blue color because I felt like I just needed it in other parts of the illustration, and it kind of just matched really well. So anyways, for this griffin, I have to say something. I really love the anatomy of this type of griffin from the Witcher series, because griffins in the Witcher series have a slight difference to griffins that I have normally been accustomed to, and that is the fact that the sort of claws, the front legs, are part of the wings. I've never actually seen that before. Usually they'll have, you know, 4 legs and then wings on top of that, which ends up being like 6 limbs because wings sort of count as limbs. And with this creature, it has 4 limbs, which does make a lot of sense. And to be completely fair, it actually reminds me a lot more of a dragon with this style, because it's got that sort of wing sort of comparison, and the claws that are coming off the wings just gives me a complete dragon vibe, and I am all for that. I love it so much. It just looks so much more badass, especially when you're fighting it in the game. It just sort of swipes you with these wings that have claws on them, and it's just so cool. And I love the way it flies with those claws, but then it lands down, and then the wings sort of, instead of folding up along its back, the wings like become the legs. I just think that's so cool, and I had to talk about that. So anyways, now we are on to the background, and I absolutely loved this part because it was really fun, and the idea I had was simple, but it still drew your eye into the middle of the page where the character's face is. And I started off doing that with some very light soft blue colors, and I just drew some clouds sort of surrounding the creature, and they sort of like fluffy but like really long clouds, and they sort of just go around him in this sort of spiral look, but not completely like a spiral. It's still like sort of messy and natural looking. And then after that, I masked it off completely. I put some masking film over the creature just to protect him, because I was going to use my airbrush system for once. It's been quite a while since I've used my airbrush system, and I had to do it. It was really fun, and I just did a really sort of soft light blue sort of layer over the whole thing, and just to give that sort of soft blue sky look without having it too heavy. And I absolutely love this background. I think it is really effective at drawing your eye into the middle of the page, while also complementing it and adding a bit more detail and a bit more texture, and just, you know, visual interest around the character, just to sort of fill in that space, if that makes sense. Now after this, I went back in after I peeled off all of that masking film, and I went back in with my colored pencils, because the masking film does sort of pull up a tiny amount of that color pencil and just leaves it a little bit lighter than before, which is completely fine because it's not overly noticeable, but I really wanted to push the darkness in that line art and just make the contrast a little bit better. And of course, while adding more shadows, I wanted to push the highlights as well and add some more highlights in there, so I went over with some light browns and also a yellow and a white pencil, and I just add a little bit of touches of highlights here and there, mainly to define specific features that I wanted to stand out more, as well as using my gel pen just to brighten up some areas. But anyways, here is the final results and I just love it so much. It's so badass looking. It looks super cool. He looks like he's about to bite your face off and I'm all here for it, except not my face because, you know, I like my face where it is. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. This was super fun to make and I 100% plan to make even more animals or creatures from The Witcher. I just love them so much and I love mythical creatures and beasts and monsters. I just think they're all super cool and yeah, I guess you can expect that from me. You know, I draw Pokemon and dragons and stuff all the time, so this ain't too different. But yeah, I hope you all have a lovely day and I will see you in my next video. Bye everyone!